Hello, welcome. My name is Edwin Sorensen. I'm the creator of Ctruth, and in this video I provide an audiobook version of Petherick's Edwin Johnson and His Writings, Part 3. A link to the reading can be found in the description to this video. First, I want to thank the Ctruth patrons for their continued support in my endeavor to explore and map the world of chronology. Thank you all. Without further ado, Edwin Johnson and His Writings, Part 3. Coming now to the subject of the present volume, the nearness of Rome to us has been noticed by other writers. While there are no Christian inscriptions or remains of Christian art or Christian architecture in this country older than the 11th century, Roman inscriptions abound, especially inscriptions in honor of Mithra, the symbols of which have found their way into Christianity. There is a legend that the Cathedral of St. Paul in London is erected on the site of a temple of Diana. As late as the time of Elizabeth, a ceremony of the offering of a doe, or a buck and doe, at the high altar on the day of the conversion of St. Paul was observed, and manners were held upon the due performance of this service. When the Orientals entered Europe, the Roman legions were, no doubt, withdrawn. Their wives and families probably remained in Britain, and their descendants are with us, along with Roman laws and observances. The remembrance and traditions are found in the Bede and other writings. The remains of roads and camps and villas, the Latin inscriptions, the large finds of Roman coins all indicate the comparative nearness of the Roman Empire. On the other hand, Kemble long ago pointed out that the narratives of Saxon immigration and settlement in England are unhistorical. Throughout the saga literature describing the expeditions of Northmen to England, not a single instance is mentioned of their coming in contact with a people called Saxons. The Northmen are mentioned by Tacitus, and not afterwards till the 9th century. This hiatus has been filled up with the apocryphal Saxon history. The story of the Danes in the Chronicles is as little trustworthy as that of the Saxons, and bears the appearance of contradiction and confusion in regard to the names of people and facts. The truth is that the Teutonic or Scandinavian element was in the country before the arrival of the Romans. Johnson says the Anglo-Saxon letters are a 16th century invention, and that it is impossible to trace the study of them higher than the Elizabethan scholars, or a hint of their being in existence before the time of Henry VIII. The stories of Brute and a long succession of British kings before the Romans, of Joseph of Arimathea at Glastonbury, have been relegated to the storehouse of fable. The histories and chronicles of Gildas, Nennius, Geoffrey of Monmouth, Asser, Ingolf of Croyland, and other writers of English history have been for a long time accounted spurious documents. William of Malmesbury picked up his history from the time of Bede, says Aubrey, out of old songs. The history of Bede, who copied Nennius, is still accepted as authentic and his memory held in veneration. He is also credited with a knowledge of Arabic and Oriental history and science. Gerbert, Pope Sylvester II, who died in 1003, 2 centuries after the supposed period of Bede, is said to have been the first European student of Arabic learning. It is not possible to enter into elaborate arguments in this short essay, but I may point out some of the anomalies in our Middle history. Our later historians do not now repeat with confidence the extraordinary stories of Crécy and Poitiers, when the flower of the French armies were destroyed with the loss of only a few English archers and footmen, or that retaliatory French story of the burning of Joan of Arc by the English. We must remember, however, that upon the writers of these stories much of our early English history is founded. The story of the Norman conquest originally occupied a poem, written 50 years after the event. The accretions which have since gathered around it now fill 5 stout volumes for William's reign and 2 additional for his son Rufus. The combatants at the Battle of Hastings are variously estimated at from 60,000 to 150,000, of whom half were slain. The site of the battlefield is shown, but where are the remains? Domesday Book is supposed to be of the same period. What collateral evidence is there that such a ponderous and voluminous work could have been compiled at that period? Usually we are dependent upon legends and traditions of history. Here we have records without any legends or traditions, preserved for 800 years, perfect and in beautiful condition. It is no doubt an authentic work, but what is its true date? Magna Carta, supposed to be 200 years later, is scarcely readable. Bracton, who is said to have died in 1268, 50 years after the date of the Magna Carta, knows nothing of it. There is no reference to it before the time of James I or Charles I, when it was found. Johnson draws attention to a very curious fact observed by Mr. Thorold Rogers in the handwriting of English medieval records. The styles of writing in 4 short and successive reigns all differ. The changes are sudden and almost simultaneous. There are, what is still more extraordinary, sudden changes in the economy of agriculture. Such changes appear to be due, as Johnson remarks, to art and craft in the scribes. The conventional histories tell us that when Europe was in her dark age, missionaries went out from a civilized and cultivated Ireland to Scotland, Wales, England, Scandinavia, and other countries, taking with them a knowledge of the faith and of art. Mr. Ruskin was a believer in this. In the 8th century, he writes, Ireland possessed a school of art in her manuscript and sculpture, which in many of its qualities, apparently in all essential qualities of decorative invention, was quite without a rival, seeming as if it might have advanced to the highest triumphs in architecture and painting. But, he continues, there was one fatal flaw in its nature, by which it was stayed, and stayed with a conspicuousness of pause, to which there is no parallel. The cause of that arrest, the master explains as a national characteristic. The staying or arrest is a mistake. The dates must be wrong. The famous Book of Kells, a manuscript copy of the Gospels, upon which Mr. Ruskin founded his remarks, and which is said to have belonged to St. Columban, 6th century, founder of the monasteries of Ionia and Lindisfarne, is perhaps the most beautiful book in the world, the work rather of angelic than human skill, and the Durham book, in a splendid binding of gold set with precious stones, are both credited to that early period. The story of Celtic art in Ireland, of Celtic art anywhere, 1200 years ago, is a fable. St. Columban, as well as St. Patrick, were ideals in the imagination of the 15th or 16th century writers, and the Book of Kells and the Durham book doubtless belong to the time of the monasteries, to a period of repose and of luxury. The same remark applies to other manuscripts of supposed early date. It is commonly assumed that the universities were the offspring of the religious bodies. Our chief institutes of learning at Cambridge and Oxford were, in all probability, in existence before the arrival of any Christian order in England. The studious reader will gather from this volume that the period of the Tudors was not only a time of severe repression and of harsh government, but also a time when free speech was impossible. Able men could only dissemble and speak in allegory. The plays of Shakespeare and of other writers are doubtless a reflection of this period. The names but a disguise, the playwriters merely the spokesmen of those who would have been sent to the Tower and the block if they had expressed their opinions openly. Mr. Legge, in The Unpopular King, finds no evidence that Richard III was a murderer, or that the 2 princes were murdered. Johnson shows how the court flatterers schemed several titles to the crown for Henry VII, but his only valid title was that of the sword, a sword that was never sheathed till the Tudors had passed away. The case, then, as it appears to me, is one which resolves itself into a consideration of dates, or of chronology. Documents have been considered already and found anomalous, or to say the least extraordinary. We have authentic records and coins illustrating 12th or 13th centuries only of the era. For an intervening or fabulous period of, say, 600 years, we have nothing of an illuminating or contemporary character. All is either unreasonable, intangible, impossible, or borrowed from the preceding or subsequent periods. Reduce the Christian era to one of 12th or 13th centuries, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 11th to 19th, and a legendary period only drops out of the chart. With the fall of the Roman Empire, the northern and eastern civilizations, the oriental religions, and ecclesiasticism enter Europe. A desire on the part of the Roman Church to trace its origins to Christ, who undoubtedly preceded Mohammed, was presumably the motive for compiling Christian documents. In an uncritical age, along with argument and homily, allegory and parable, and moral teaching drawn from a variety of sources, numerous forgeries were easily foisted upon a credulous clergy as well as upon the laity. Later on, honest men collated, copied, commented on, and translated these writings, and rejecting what they thought apocryphal, collected the rest into books, which time and time alone has sanctified. In such a manner have all sacred books been compiled. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the European recovered the use of his intellect, the 19th revealed to him the world of natural science, the 20th will probably bring to him a reconstructed history. Since the author's death, indeed while I have been arranging these rough notes, several learned works have appeared, bearing more or less directly upon early English history, art, and law. The subjects of all these works are inferentially treated in this volume. Edward A. Petherick, Streatham, June 1903. That concludes Edwin Johnson and his writings, Part 3. Thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe, comment, and never stop seeking the truth about chronology.